The Third Year, Part 2. Cousin Peter came on Sunday to tell Manly and Laura that Mr. Whitehead wanted to sell his sheep, 100 purebred Shropshires. A presidential election was coming in the fall, and it looked as though the Democrats were due to win. Mr. Whitehead, being a good Republican, was sure the country would be ruined. The tariff would be taken off, and wool and sheep would be worth nothing. Peter was sure they could be bought at a bargain. He would buy them himself if only he had a place to keep them. How much of a bargain? What would you have to pay? Manly asked. Peter was sure he could buy them for $2 apiece, since Mr. Whitehead was feeling particularly uneasy about the election. And the sale of their wool next spring ought to nearly pay for them, he added. There were 100 sheep. Peter had $100 due him in wages. That would be half the money needed to buy them at $2 each. Laura was thinking aloud. They had land enough by using the school section that lay a whole section of land with good grazing and hay free to whoever got there first and used it. For the first time, Laura was glad of the Dakota law that gave 2 sections in every township to the schools, and especially glad that one of them adjoined their tree claim. We'd have pasture and hay enough, and we could build good shelter, Manly said. But the other $100, Laura asked doubtfully. Manly reminded her of the colt that they had bought with her school money and said he believed he could sell it now for $100. She could buy half the sheep if she wanted to gamble on them. And so it was decided. If Peter could get the sheep for $200, Laura would pay half. Peter was to care for the sheep, herding them onto the school section in summer. Together, Peter and Manly would put up the hay, with Manly furnishing teams and machinery. Back of the hay barn, they would build on another one for the sheep, opening onto a yard fenced with wire. Peter would live with them and help with the chores in return. A few days after the colt was sold, Peter came driving the sheep into the yard that had been built for them. There were 100 good ewes and 6 old ones that had been thrown in for nothing. Every morning after that, Peter drove the sheep out to the school section to graze, carefully herding them away from the grass that would be mowed for hay. The rains came frequently. It even seemed as though the winds did not blow as hard as usual, and the wheat and oats grew splendidly. The days hurried along toward harvest. Just a little while longer now, and all would be well with the crop. Fearful of hail, Manly and Laura watched the clouds. If only it would not hail. As the days passed, bringing no hailstorm, Laura found herself thinking, everything will even up in the end. The rich will have their ice in the summer, but the poor get theirs in winter. When she caught herself at it, she would laugh with a nervous catch in her throat. She must not allow herself to be under such a strain. But if only they could harvest and sell this crop, it would mean so much. Just to be free of debt and have the interest money to use for themselves would make everything so much easier through the winter that was coming soon. At last the wheat was in milk again. Manly estimated that the yield would be 40 bushels to the acre. Then one morning the wind blew strong from the south, and it was a warm wind. Before noon the wind was hot and blowing harder, and for 3 days the hot wind blew. When it died down at last, the morning of the 4th was still. The wheat was dried and yellow. The grains were cooked in the milk, all dried and shrunken, absolutely shriveled. It was not worth harvesting as wheat, but Manly hitched Skip and Barnum to the mowing machine and mowed it and the oats to be stacked like hay and fed without threshing to the stalk as a substitute for both hay and grain. As soon as this was done, haying was begun, for they must cut hay on the school section ahead of anyone else. It was theirs if they were the first to claim it and cut it. Laura and Rose went to the hayfield again. Laura drove the mower while Manly raked the hay cut the afternoon before. And a neighbor boy was hired to herd the sheep while Peter helped Manly stack the hay. They stacked great ricks of hay all around the sheep barn and on 3 sides of the sheep yard, leaving the yard open on the south side only. And the 25th of August came and passed, and the 3rd year of farming was ended.